You are standing in the middle of a crowded store aisle when your child completely loses control. They throw themselves onto the floor, screaming at the top of their lungs, limbs flailing wildly. To every passing shopper, this looks like a classic textbook behavioral display. But as a parent standing over them, your immediate challenge is that you are likely misdiagnosing the neurological event taking place right beneath your feet. Most parenting advice treats all high-intensity crying as the exact same behavioral problem, offering universal solutions like timeouts, negotiations, or firm discipline. Yet treating a neurological meltdown like a behavioral tantrum is one of the quickest ways to accidentally prolong your child's distress and fracture their sense of security. These two states do not just look slightly different, they originate from completely separate structures within the human brain. Today, we are looking past the surface noise to decode the critical neurological divergence between a tantrum and a meltdown, providing you with the exact diagnostic tools needed to identify and neutralize each state instantly. Welcome to Baby Mind Chronicles. We are mapping the structural neurobiology of early childhood behavior. By the conclusion of this evaluation, you will understand the operational mechanics of the prefrontal cortex during goal-directed manipulation, the biochemistry of a limbic system hijack, and the precise tactical adjustments required to restore equilibrium to your child's nervous system. Let us isolate the first state, the tantrum. A tantrum is a strictly cortical, upper brain event. It is driven entirely by the prefrontal cortex, which means it is goal-directed and highly calculated. When a toddler throws a tantrum because you refused to give them a piece of candy, their brain is executing a localized strategy to alter an environmental boundary. Because it is an upper brain process, your child remains in complete control of their cognitive faculties. Pay close attention to the structural formatting of a tantrum. You will notice brief pauses where your child checks to see if you are watching. They are monitoring their audience to see if their performance is yielding the desired result. If you give them the candy, or if you completely remove the audience by walking into another room, the tantrum will often cease almost instantly. The moment the goal is achieved or deemed impossible, the prefrontal cortex shuts down the behavioral display because it is no longer logically efficient. Now, let us contrast this with the second state, the meltdown. A meltdown is a subcortical, lower brain event. It has absolutely nothing to do with manipulation, goals, or boundaries. Instead, it is a total structural collapse triggered by an overload of the limbic system and the amygdala. When a child experiences sensory saturation, extreme physical fatigue, or emotional flooding, their internal processing system reaches maximum capacity. The amygdala perceives this internal overload as an actual immediate threat to survival, effectively staging a neurological coup. The prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of the brain, is knocked completely offline. Your child is no longer choosing to scream. They have been plunged into an involuntary biological fight or flight emergency. They do not care if they have an audience. They do not pause to look at you, and if you offer them the candy they wanted 10 minutes ago, they will push it away. Their brain is physically incapable of processing logic, rewards, or conditions until their nervous system cools down. Because these two states originate from completely opposite regions of the brain, utilizing the wrong parental response will actively worsen the situation. Here is your real-time diagnostic framework for intervening effectively based on their neurobiology. If your diagnostic assessment confirms a tantrum, your strategy must focus on maintaining absolute structural boundaries. Do not negotiate, do not get angry, and do not offer elaborate explanations. Simply restate the boundary once in a flat, monotone voice, and completely withdraw your attention. By removing the cognitive reward of an audience, you prove to their prefrontal cortex that this specific behavioral strategy is a waste of metabolic energy. However, if your diagnostic assessment confirms a meltdown, you must pivot entirely to a protocol of co-regulation and sensory reduction. Do not try to discipline, do not ask them questions, and do not lecture them about their behavior. Dim the lights, minimize the environmental noise, and act as a steady, non-threatening physical safety as their system safely de-escalates. Your calm, non-threatening presence sends a direct chemical signal to their amygdala that the danger has passed, allowing their lower brain to step down from high alert and safely bring their prefrontal cortex back online. Understanding this neural divide completely shifts how you view the raw intensity of early childhood. A child throwing a tantrum is practicing the early, clumsy mechanics of social negotiation and environmental influence. A child experiencing a meltdown is a vulnerable organism calling out for neurological shelter during a systemic internal storm. Neither scenario represents a failure of your parenting, nor does it indicate a flaw in your child's disposition. They are simply navigating the intense structural formatting of an evolving human nervous system. By learning to read the data, distinguish the brain structures involved, and apply the correct physiological response, you strip away the chaos and step into your role as a highly capable neural guide. Trust the science, remain the steady anchor, and lead your child safely through to the other side.